Hello, New York Giants fans, and welcome to the Big Blue View YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ed Valentine of Big Blue View. Few things to talk about today in relation to your New York Giants. I haven't done a show since Wednesday night's release of the 2024 NFL schedule, so we'll talk about that quite a bit. We'll also talk about the Giants' appearance on an off-season edition of Hard Knocks, Giants' first ever appearance on a version of Hard Knocks. We'll discuss the throwback jerseys that the Giants introduced on Thursday, jerseys that have drawn a mixed reaction from the Giants fan base. And we'll also talk a little bit about the beginning of phase 3 of the off-season program, commonly known as OTAs, which take place next week. Media has access to one of those 3 days. So we'll talk about all of those things. Before we do, though, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to support the work here at the channel. Always appreciate you guys for stopping in, spending some time with me here on the Big Blue View YouTube channel. All right, let's talk about the schedule release. We know the 17 games that the Giants are going to play. Over at Big Blue View, you guys have had a chance to vote on how many games you think the Giants are going to win. How do you think the season's going to go? You've seen my opinions in written form as to how I think the schedule plays out. You've seen Big Blue View's Tony Del Genio do a game-by-game breakdown, listing some of his thoughts. I think Tony came up with an 8-9 record for the Giants, which actually, in the end, push comes to shove, 8-9 probably wouldn't be a horrible outcome for the Giants. As I record this, in our poll asking how many games fans would expect the Giants to win in 2024, 37% say 6 or 7, 41% say 8 or 9, only 10% say 10 or more, and only 12% say 5 or less. So you're looking at a season that most Giants fans are expecting 6 to 9 wins, maybe flirting with the 500 mark, somewhere around there. Not a horrible season, not a great season. Another season of mediocrity, or maybe a little bit below that, expected by Giants fans. But let's talk about the schedule. Let's talk about how it breaks down. Giants are in week 1 and week 2. They face the Minnesota Vikings at home in week 1, and then they're on the road in week 2 to face the Washington Commanders. And when you look at the Giants' schedule, realistically, those 2 games are critically important to the Giants' opportunity to be relevant, to have a good season. If you look at the 6 games after those 2 games, it becomes an incredibly difficult stretch. If you remember last year, the Giants opened with a 6-game stretch of games in which realistically the only game they could have been expected to win was the game in week 2 against the Arizona Cardinals, game that they did win. But they ended up starting the season 1-5 in a very, very difficult stretch. And really, they got buried. So they never really had an opportunity to get into any sort of playoff race. And you kind of could see that coming last year. And what you see coming this year is a stretch where the Giants have an opportunity in week 1 and week 2. They're home against the Minnesota Vikings. It's only one of 3 out of their 17 games that DraftKings Sportsbook, SB Nation partner, has the Giants favored to win. They're favored at home at MetLife Stadium, first game of their 100th season, favored to win that game. They're an underdog week 2 against the Washington Commanders, but These are two games that the Giants really need to win to get the season off to a good start, to have a chance not to be buried by week 7 or week 8. The game against Minnesota, that could be Sam Darnold quarterbacking the Vikings, who aren't a bad football team, but you're looking at a game quarterbacked by possibly Sam Darnold on the road. The other possibility, of course, could be number 10 overall pick JJ McCarthy, guy who the Giants passed on in the 2024 NFL draft, passed on McCarthy at number 6, took Malik Neighbors, wide receiver out of LSU. And what you're staring at here is an opportunity, a possibility for the Giants to face rookie quarterbacks in week 1 and week 2. And regardless of what anyone thinks of those two players, they're not going to be as prepared. They're not going to know as much. They're not going to be as ready in week 1 and week 2 as they might be in week 17 or week 18 or in the second, third, or fourth years of their careers. So week 1 and week 2 is a tremendous opportunity if you get to face two teams playing rookie quarterbacks. And even we know Sam Darnold, if Darnold is playing, Darnold has had opportunities with the Jets and in other places in San Francisco and now in Minnesota, and has never lived up to having been the 3rd overall pick. I think it was the 2018 NFL draft, a year when there was a lot of speculation, and I know I'm guilty of it as well. I thought the Giants probably should have been in on Sam Darnold in that particular draft, but quarterback is hit and miss in the draft. We know that being a high pick doesn't guarantee anything, and to this point in his career, it just hasn't worked out for Sam Darnold. So those first two games are a tremendous opportunity for the Giants to get their season off to a good start. That's followed by a really difficult 6-game stretch at Cleveland versus Dallas, at Seattle versus Cincinnati versus Philadelphia in the Saquon Barkley returns to MetLife game, which should be a whole lot of fun, at least initially. I'm really, really curious to see how Saquon is greeted by Giants fans at MetLife. I wonder if that reception is going to be a good one or a bad one. I suspect maybe a little bit of both. And the last game in that 6-game stretch is at Pittsburgh. So very difficult 6-game stretch following those two opening games. I think the Giants would be extremely fortunate to come out of that first 8-game stretch at 4-4. And the key to coming out of that 4-4 is to win those first two games, especially if they're facing rookie quarterbacks. So we'll see how all of that plays out. Couple of other cool things about the schedule. The Germany game, week 10 against the Carolina Panthers. Best thing about that for Giants fans is that was and really technically is a Carolina home game. So the Giants are not giving up a home game. Probably should have seen this coming when the Giants got an NFL marketing rights deal earlier this offseason in Germany. Probably should have seen coming the fact that the NFL would try to put the Giants in a game in Germany in 2024, and they'll play Carolina. That's another game in which the Giants are favored, another game you'd really, really like to see them win. But interesting game nonetheless. The Giants have never been beaten in an international game. They've won those games the 3 times they've played in those in the regular season. We'll see if they can keep their unbeaten streak internationally alive in 2024. I love the timing of the week 17 game against the Indianapolis Colts. If the NFL schedules that game, and they've given themselves the option of scheduling it on Saturday, December 28th or Sunday, December 29th, if they play that game on Saturday, on the 28th. That will be the 66th anniversary of the 1958 Giants versus Baltimore Colts NFL championship game, commonly known as the greatest game ever played, won by the Colts in overtime, game that really catapulted the NFL into national prominence and really planted the seeds for what the NFL is today. So, really terrific timing by the NFL to schedule Giants versus Indianapolis at MetLife Stadium in week 17, going to either be 66 years to the day or 66 years and 1 day past that 1958 championship game that really changed everything as far as the trajectory of the NFL, the ascension of the NFL into the premier sport in America today. So really, really cool game that I'm looking forward to. And something else that came out this week that I know Giants fans are looking forward to is the Giants' appearance on the first ever off-season version of Hard Knocks. For those of you who have been Hard Knocks fans, and I will admit, I am not one who has spent a whole lot of time watching Hard Knocks episodes over the years. I get enough of it by covering the Giants. I get enough of it by being at training camp, by being at practices, by going to games. The training camp Hard Knocks episodes have not been must-watch television for me. But for those of you who are familiar with those episodes, with what they do on Hard Knocks, with the training camp episodes, this is different. The HBO has never put together an off-season Hard Knocks, and this makes sense for the Giants. The Giants have always resisted. John Mara has always resisted the idea of Hard Knocks, the idea of having the cameras around in training camp, the idea of having that intrusion during a time when the Giants are getting ready for the season. This will be much different. This is an off-season version. This will air on 5 Tuesdays through the month of July, and it will cover the period from the end of the 2023 season in early January right up through June, so right up through OTAs and mandatory mini camp and things like that. There won't be a whole lot of player access there. You're not going to see behind the scenes guys getting cut. You're not going to see some of the things that you're used to on the training camp version of Hard Knocks. But this will cover a lot of the Giants draft and free agency prep, probably how they handled the draft. You'll see some combine stuff. You might see some free agency discussion. So it'll be an interesting look at the off-season process. Maybe we'll learn some things about how the Giants put together their revised coaching staff after moving on from Wink Martindale and some of the other coaches that they moved on from in the off-season. So it will be interesting, but it's different. I kind of refer to it as a soft landing for the Giants into Hard Knocks, because and I come back to the word intrusive. It doesn't feel as intrusive to the process of getting players ready for the 2024 NFL season as a normal version of Hard Knocks might. Okay, so another thing that happened this week in a very newsy week was that the Giants, in celebration of their 100th NFL season, announced a whole bunch of things that they'll be doing during the year. And on Thursday, they announced the launch, the creation, the introduction of throwback jerseys that will honor that 100-year history. Obviously, any sort of jersey, any sort of throwback, any sort of uniform, these things always draw a lot of opinion, a lot of comment, a lot of criticism on both sides. The Giants said this was a 2-year process to come up with this design. This design, tan pants, winged helmet, uh, largely red jerseys, what they're calling, um, I anyway, I can't think of exactly what they're calling the jersey, but it is a jersey that honors their history, that honors the beginnings of the franchise. They're calling it Century Red. I'm sorry. I didn't have that in front of me and couldn't come up with it until I went and looked it up. I guess those things happen when you start to get older. And I apologize for kind of stumbling over that, but the Giants are calling it Century Red. And I know that I've never been a big fan of the red jerseys, and I may be in the minority here, but this jersey I happen to like. I happen to think they're pretty cool. Maybe I'm not a fan of the tan pants per se, but I absolutely understand the various pieces of this jersey. This jersey wasn't meant to be a throwback to the 1980s or 90s, like the all white jerseys that we've seen the Giants wear a couple times on Thursday night football and on a couple of other occasions. This jersey was meant to honor the beginnings of a cornerstone franchise in the NFL. All of these color schemes, all of these designs harken back to the early days of the franchise. The helmet comes from the late 30s and 40s. The tan pants and the red come from the red jerseys come, from the I think the tan pants come from the very first uniforms that the Giants wore. The red jerseys come from the early uniforms that the Giants wore. So to me, it's a really cool nod to the history of the Giants. Even the patch that they're going to wear is made in the shape of the Polo Grounds, which was the first home for the Giants. And I know that folks are split on these jerseys. As I'm recording the poll that we put up on Big Blue View, asking people for their opinions on the jerseys, is still open, still available for you guys to go and vote if you want to do that. And I know as of right now, as I record, I left folks 3 options: awful, awesome, or don't care what the Giants wear as long as they win games. 43% of our voters to this point say that the jerseys are awesome, a great way to honor the team's history. 34% say that the jerseys are awful, and 23% don't care as long as the Giants win games. So a pretty good split of opinion. Not really weighted one way or the other tremendously in terms of whether people hate them or love them. I personally like the jerseys. I think they're a really cool nod. I love the helmets. To be honest with you, I've never been a fan of the lowercase ny on the current Giants helmet, but I love these. With the winged look, with the blue and the red stripes or wings or whatever you want to call those. I love that. There's some blue in the jersey, some prominent red in the jersey. I'm just I like them. Maybe I'm going to end up being in the minority, but but I've been in the minority before, and that's fine. But I tend to like them. I'm very, very curious about which games the Giants will wear those jerseys in. Um, the announcement from the team said that they would wear them up to twice in the 2024 season. And that obviously is not a lot in a 17-game schedule. I'm very curious as to which games will be chosen for those uniforms to be utilized. I'm curious if they'll utilize them week 1 when they open against the Minnesota Vikings. since that is the real, opening first time that they'll be able to celebrate the 100th season in MetLife Stadium. So I'm wondering about that, and we'll see. But I know you guys, some of you guys will differ. I've seen a whole lot of opinions of those jerseys, that a lot of hatred of those jerseys. But I know people, it's hard, it's different, it's not something Giants fans are used to, but I think they're pretty cool. Anyway, finally, we take another step closer to football next week when the Giants begin phase 3 of their offseason program, commonly known as the OTAs. That's the on-field portion of the offseason program. That will include 10 workouts. Media will have access to 3 of those. Next week, there will be 3 OTAs on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Media has access to the Thursday workout. Yours truly will plan to be there at Quest Diagnostics in East Rutherford, for that workout. Get a look at how Giants rookies Malik Neighbors, Tyler Nubin, and the rest of the rookies are mixing in with the veteran players. Get a look at whether or not Daniel Jones, as he rehabs from his torn ACL, whether or not he's doing anything on the field. To be honest, I'm not expecting Jones to do much, if anything at all, during this phase. I mean, maybe he'll throw a little bit during the individual portion, during the early portions of practice, but I would not expect to see Jones during any 7-on-7 work, anything that resembles something live, something where he might accidentally even get hit. So we'll see, but it'll be interesting to see how the how the rookies mix in with the veterans. It'll be interesting to see what the Giants are thinking initially as to how they want to work their offensive line, how they want to align players, whether John Runyon Jr. is on the left side or the right side. Where exactly is Jermaine Illuminor? Does Illuminor take some snaps at right tackle as well as at one of the guard spots? So it'll be interesting, and we'll get our first look at the full group next week. So we'll be looking forward to that, and hopefully you guys will be looking forward to our coverage as well, and to all of our future episodes of the show here on the Big Blue View YouTube channel. All right, Giants fans, that's all I've got for you today. Have a great weekend. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.